there we go. Esports is pro sports, and a lot of people do believe that. We believe it more than you can possibly know. If you look at the entire ecosystem, you've got teams and players and fans, you've got media rights from broadcasters, you've got original content shows, and you've got, of course, merchandise and sponsorships and advertising. So we went down our way raising money for investment, but not for just a team ownership group, for $38 million that we raised to be in the entire ecosystem with teams, leagues, and of course original content. Well, and here we are. And back in October at TwitchCon, obviously many of you know, we announced the H1Z1 Pro League, what we believe is going to be the first league with many firsts. It's the first Battle Royale Pro Esports League. It's the first league where owners and players are on the governance committee. It's the first league where in year one, a third of the revenues go to our software publishing partner, David, a third go to Twin Galaxies around running the league, and a third go to the teams. So from day one, we wanted to make sure that everybody felt like it was our league, not a publisher's league. That's where we are. That's why everybody's here today. As you guys know, tomorrow's going to be very, very exciting. So we think we're taking this from esports 1.0 to esports 2.0, where the league is a pro sports league, and in fact, the game itself is the instrument by which we execute teams and players being elevated to a whole new profile. So Mr. Hall here is going to talk to you about esports 2.0 now.
Well, hello everyone. Are we excited? I mean, this is like, this is different, right? So we've been, going to the stage, playing and seeing all this. I know you've been watching the activity on, the internet, the various commentary, as people try to wrap their heads around the differences that are going on, because everyone is very used to esports being in a particular way, right? And most of it is effectively tournaments and organizations riding the popularity of the game until the popularity, ceases, and then everybody sort of moves on, and that's fine. That's also exciting and valid to do, but that is not sports. That's not a sustainable thing. Why? Because in that universe, the most important thing is the game. That's the point of interest. I'm watching the Fortnite thing because I'm watching the Fortnite thing because I like Fortnite and it's all about Fortnite. And that's great. However, why do we watch sports? We watch sports not because of the Wilson basketball, right? Or Wilson football. We watch sports. Spalding? Is it Spalding? Like, see, it shows you how much I know about sports. I don't touch that stuff. Not a game. So, suddenly, we want people to watch for the players. That's why. The game is great, the game is fun. We need a game that is something that people can easily understand and follow and immediately get the drama and get into without an instruction manual, without ever having to want to play it or anything. Because let me tell you, there's a lot of people who want to participate in esports, but they don't necessarily want to play a game. They want to be part of all this cool stuff that everyone's involved with. You got to do that, but you do that through people. The emotional journey that all of these players, this is a mixed group of players and support and press, that they go through to get there. And that is actually very interesting, and it's something that people want to learn, support, and be about. So that's esports. If you really want to know what esports 2.0 is, in one sentence, it's esports 2.0 is when the primary centerpiece of interest is the player and not the game. Esports 1.0 is the other way around. They're both, in both equations, they're both points of interest, but the weighting of it in esports are people in this room. So, one thing I want to call out is Daybreak, okay? As a publisher who has a game, they had to culturally wrap their head around the idea that their game would not necessarily be the front and center thing, that there could be this whole other concept. And they're in partnership with Twin Galaxies and with the players. We're leading the way to show this. So, I want to give a lot of credit to Daybreak for making it through that psychological process. You guys know, who come from the game space, how hard it is for a publisher to not rule with an iron fist, right? So credit to them for that. And then credit to the, I know that in the gaming space, the games you play are more than just the game now. Now it's almost like they're like these clubs, these little tribal cultures and things. So it's almost sometimes, if you choose to play a game, oh, I can't believe you're playing that game. You're not playing this game, dude. You're so lame. It's like you're just out, slates. So I understand that when you make a choice to come and participate in this all-new thing called Esports 2.0, playing H1Z1 in something with some Facebook distribution, that's a big decision on your part and commitment to help drive this new narrative. And so that needs to be recognized as well. And so I just want you to know that that's well known too.
So, and I think that from day one, we have decided every decision we have to make, we're going to err on the side of going to a pro sports league, err on the side of making it about players, err on the side of making it about everybody participating so everybody wins. I think what you're going to see is that by the end of this first split, or by the end of the second split, players are going to be known. There's got to be our Michael Jordans, our Steph Currys, our Kevin Durant's, and our LeBrons. That's what we're all about. If we can do that for all teams, we win, because the league is the most entertaining. I mean, let's be honest. Today, esports is about gamers watching gamers. Right? Where's the other billion people that watch basketball or football or baseball? Where are they? Where it's an entertainment experience, not an education experience. Let me see how he plays the game. And that's really what we're about. I think you're going to see us break some real innovative ground here on production style around how we broadcast this. You've already seen the circular stage. You will start to see both in-game and out-of-game production capability, spectator cameras, and scoring systems, and drama and rivalries are coming, because that's what sports is about. You root for certain people and certain teams because you have an emotional connection to it. We're going to do that for esports.
Yeah, it's very hard to have an emotional connection to a game feature if you're not a game player, right? But it's very easy to have an emotional connection to the people we see here and what they're accomplishing, and what Galaxies is going to specifically recognize in all these different things. So
when we think a year from now and we look back, we want to be considered, wow, that's as fun as Monday Night Football. That's as fun as March Madness. That's as fun as a Super Bowl, right? And if we don't break through that, right, then we're not doing our jobs, and we're not serving the players and the teams and the fans the way we are. People should be tuning into our broadcast because it's so entertaining, right? And that's all the teams, that's the guys. It's how we produce. It's Jace's comedy occasionally. All these things are very, very important to how we make this successful.
And this is the thing that I really want to stress is, many of the people in this room who are on teams, you guys and gals make a big difference in terms of how you draw attention to your activity as well. This is not just something that we can, by force, or sort of force. But to be clear, the goals here are, the Battle Royale genre is huge. And it's great that there's going to be, that there are really big games, and there's going to be more big games coming out. It's going to be, we think, the largest gaming category there is, because there's so many ways to slice and dice this type of gameplay style, right? So, okay, that's fine. We want the H1PL to be the most forward-facing, easily understood, accessible vantage point for the uninformed but interested in esports person to watch and get excited about. And they're going to do that through these players and through these teams. So we're putting a tremendous, this gets into why Facebook is so important, because most of the user base of Twitch already knows everything. They've already been exposed to everything. It's great for what it is and for that audience there, but it's a microcosm of everybody else on the planet Earth. We need to be in a place where it can be discovered by others. And as long as you're marrying that with a presentation that Stratton was talking about to help guide that in, we are going to be able to help create and bring forward the stars that are in this room and let them get the attention that they rightfully deserve.
Well, and then the other part we're trying to do, let's go beyond the gamer to the casual gamer. Groups on gaming, there are 800 million who have said they're casual gamers. Now, those numbers dwarf anything else you've heard in Twitch or any of the other platforms, but they're not yet interested, intrigued enough, or have discovered the kinds of things we're talking about. And that's our job. We need to make that happen. Part of making that happen starts tomorrow when we treat this like a professional sport. We're going to have a celebrity chef do our tailgate, right, for 2 hours prior to the match starting. We're going to have a DJ come in, play music. We're going to make this all about celebrity and entertainment and fun. We have Michelle Rodriguez as our guest star tomorrow for the entire performance. Right? She's going to be interviewing, talking, interacting, and she's so excited. We all know Michelle's a gamer. She's been a gamer for a long, long time. She jumped at the chance and she's very, very excited. Christine Leahy, who's been on American Ninja Warrior as the host, but also on Calvin's radio show. She's the co-host there. She signed up for the whole season to be the host. We've got great casters. We're going to have a surprise caster tomorrow. H1Z1 coming in to be the second caster right through the entire day. We've got influencers who are on Twitch coming in, and they're going to be having some very, very special announcements regarding how they're tying themselves into H1Z1 League, not just for tomorrow, but for the rest of this split. We have a number of other celebrities who are, if you think about gaming, we all know athletes game. Every NBA guy, they game on the plane, right? They wheel out portable, consoles. You think we've got Kevin Durant's an investor of Vision Esports, Odell Beckham's an investor. They love gaming. You think about entertainers, right? They're all gamers. So what we have to do now is get the crossover, right? The crossover content and the crossover linkage from those entertainers, celebrities, and pro sports people into esports and this kind of gaming. And many of them are going to be here tomorrow. Who knows who Tony Gonzalez is? Tony's a very good friend of mine. He's coming tomorrow with his kid. Right? We've got Eric Murillo coming tonight. We've got Diplo coming tonight. We have a number of entertainers coming because they think of this as an entertainment spectacle, not an esport competition. And that's the if we can stay true to that, this thing, we're going to all blow it up.
Yeah, I can't tell you how excited we are about this and how, for me, how exciting it is just to see players get this kind of opportunity, right? So, and because you deserve to be, sitting next to Kevin Durant and everybody else who has achieved in their categories, and that'll just never happen until the player is put first as the primary point of interest in a league in expression. So obviously, look, if enough people are watching it, certainly the game will get an uplift and all that other stuff. That's great, right? Of course. And the one thing I want to mention is this Pro League is taking up a lot of our time, but as soon as we get this thing sort of rolling forward, amateurs, Joe to Pro, all of that work to make sure that we're including the rest of the entire community and creating avenues for them to bubble up into these top spots, that will be there because that's going to be a big portion of what's going on. This is sort of the flagship at the front.
Well, and as we talked about Twin Galaxies and our pro division led by Miranda Tursky, this is the first league we're running, and we're going to do a really good job of it. We're going to be very focused on it. But you can expect us, right, to announce a second and a third league, a similar structure, right? Not in Battle Royale, perhaps, in a different category. But we've had some of the team owners, the North America's most renowned teams, come to us and said, "We like what you guys do. Let's do another one. Let's do another one." So we like this model.
Yeah, that's a big deal. Success here will certainly impact the entire industry because there will be an active living example of how to do it differently. And publishers that may not be as large as some of the larger ones, but they're putting their game out, they're going to actually have an option to be thinking about, well, maybe we can structure the league in partnership with Twin Galaxies and do it like sports, do it this way. It works. It doesn't always have to be one way. The player is not always the customer,
So just like Jace would never leave my house and get off my couch, we clearly are just babbling on right now. So at this point, I think we should turn around and open it up for questions.
I have one question before we do that. This is just totally off subject, but
Well, good.
Just for a show of hands, I'm just curious. just from a show of hands, how many people in this room heard about the Billy Mitchell Twin Galaxies decision? Okay. I just wanted to see, but like, okay. All right, that's
I'm
all.
so proud that it was.
No. I mean, like, you think a simple decision like that, buried in a thread, and then all these people know about it. So, okay, so yeah, go ahead.
Open up for questions.
Yes.
Hey, Stephen A. Sarch with Newsweek. I'm curious how you guys plan to tell the narratives of these players and share them for.
So I think what you're going to see is there are 75 players in this league between now and the end of the second split, which is a total of 10 weeks, 20 weeks plus a 2-week championship. Every single player will have a profile done with high quality content production capability, either from the teams that they're with or from some of the entertainment people who are producing the league. This is a player-driven league, and it will be. And I can't wait to see the rivalries, the trash talking, but also the great stories, right, where we're lifting people up.
No, there's an active league sort of production effort to feature all the different things about the league. There's actual content planned, there's a magazine show, and a whole bunch of other things that'll be produced and output on a weekly basis to make sure that these stories are told. Off the court stories, but also we supported the teams themselves to also create content on their own, and we're going to have, when those teams produce content, they will be able to plug that into our league system, and the league can help promote it too.
Yeah, again, if you go back in history, because I started looking at this when the NFL started, and the way that it progressed was rich owners created teams that had names. Players were just players, there were no stars, right? The NBA started out in the 30s and 40s, very, very similar way. Eventually they got to, this is decades later, they got to, the players are more important, right, in the league. And we're trying to do that in years rather than decades, because we've seen the past, we know the success, right? And clearly, this generation is about uplifting players and rooting for people and wanting to have rivalries and being about stars. And when I was running the San Jose Sharks, Joe Thornton came to us from the Boston Bruins one year. The next year, 2 other great free agents came. The next year, we were in the playoffs all the way to the 3rd round. The next year, more free agents came. You have to create team organizations where the players tell the other player, come with our organization. That's player driven. It's not team driven.
Yes.
Spencer Rowledge with Hardcore Gamer. I'm just, for outside viewers, people who don't game or aren't in the sphere, how are you going to make this accessible so that they, understand what's going on in the game without having to look up a bunch of stuff? You find this with the Overwatch League a lot. People will watch it and they're like, I don't know.
You mean the assault on my visual cortex?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's
I can try to answer this. All right, well, so for those who didn't hear the question is for the non-hardcore, what are we doing to make this as presentable and as easy to digest as possible? Okay, so there's a few stages to that. There's one thing that no one can do anything about, which is the nature of the game itself, okay? This is one of the reasons why H1Z1 has been chosen for this new format, because just about anyone can look at the screen and identify the elements they're seeing. That's a tree, that's a police car, that's a building, right? They don't have to make a translation into a more cartoon universe or with magical elements or any of that. So you're lowering the barrier there. Battle Royale as a genre concept is already digestible, last man standing, and it was pushed by the Hunger Games. So you have a bunch of education out there already in terms of the dynamic of what is sort of going on. Hold on. Okay, so once you get past that point, then it becomes visually, technically, what can we eliminate off the screen to remove noise? What can we do in terms of the gameplay to make it more, it's hard when you're shooting people from, and they look like a black pixel in the distance. It's hard to appreciate what's going on there. So efforts were made both, first it started with Daybreak, who spent a lot of time and money creating technology with their spectator cameras so that when people shoot at each other, it immediately pulls up on the screen who they're shooting at. You get to see their health bars. All of that stuff for better spectating. Changing the scoring system. So, for example, Battle Royale typically is, well, you're the last person standing, you won, you win everything. What that will encourage is non-engagement. The more, if I'm in this, we're all gonna try to kill each other, but the last person standing wins. My strategy is to avoid everybody. The less engagement, the better. That's not entertaining. That's not particularly. Okay, go.
When we did Fight for the Crown, you guys were there. It was on the prime time, the CW network broadcast April 20th. First kill, 27 minutes in. Okay. Yeah, that's not gonna work. I mean, even we were bored. So this will encourage.
Yeah. So instead of awarding points for placement, just for placing, it's a bonus. It's a bonus multiplier based on your activity that took place in the game. So now everything is kill oriented, right? So you go in, I don't want to use the word kill, player elimination. It's elimination oriented. So when you go in, the number of people that a team eliminates is the base score, and then where they place relative to that is a multiplier, okay? There is something special, which is, in order to keep it simple, how many points should someone get if they eliminate another player, right? To the uninformed audience. How about 1 point? You don't need 8,000. You don't have to have people doing math on it, right? Okay, so you have 1 point. If they do it with a melee approach, either they punch someone out or they use a knife, that's worth 10. And those 10 points, by the way, were suggested by the players themselves. So we started at 5, and they went, oh man, let me tell you. Getting one of those types of eliminations is very, very hard. It needs to be worth the attempt, right? So it's a 10-point thing. So you have 1 point, 10 point, and you have a multiplier game. Very easy to understand. So there are a number of things that go into that. The ability to look at the screen and immediately know where all the teams are placing, right? Like as it's playing. The ability to see people's faces with the gameplay, right? It's expensive to do that when you have 75 people, let me tell you. But of course. Oh, well, okay, all right, so while we have done a lot, and I know we haven't tested out the heart monitors yet, but those are going on, and so you'll be able to see the emotional state of players while they're watching, right? We tested this out in a show called the Taunt Fest, and we see, and I was talking, let me sidetrack, because I want to talk about the 75 thing, but it's this. A heart monitor on a professional athlete who's playing a physical sport does not give you any additional information. We already know they are exerting themselves. It's useless, it's a waste. However, on an e-sport player, the information you're getting is emotional state. That's something you can't get any other way. You can't get from their gameplay, can't get from maybe their look on their face. But when you see the heart rate right underneath their lip, that's telling narrative. There might be some players whose heart rates never jump. Like they're just ice, and there's might be, and there'll be really interesting statistics you can start to pull from performance. Like when the heart rate's up at 170, man, there's a lot of fun stuff there. So make it easy to understand the emotional state of the players. Make it easy to understand what teams are winning. All of that's going in. Now on the reverse side, and this is an important piece. As we make it easier, and we have edits and cuts, and the directors saying, go here, go there. The hardcore, the very informed, they're interested in the art of what they're watching. They want to see the style, they want to see the thinking of every player. And it's impossible to do both of those things at the same time in the live broadcast. You got to choose which way you're weighting. So in answer to the hardcore, what we're doing, and I don't think any other league has done this at this scale, is right after the matches, after the game day is over, all 75 point of views of each player gets uploaded unedited. So if I want to know what Flamehopper did, right? I will be able, right after, I watched the broadcast and I got all that stuff, and then I will be able to go straight up and see Flamehopper's point of view through all the matches.
Hiding in the grass, the woman?
Huh?
Hiding in the grass?
Hiding in the grass, hiding in the bush. No, he's hopping flames.
No, and so, long answer, but then, in addition to that, during broadcast, every week, you're going to be seeing highlight shows, you're going to see top 10 elimination, you're going to see team profiles. you're going to see a lot of content around it. So it's as if we're in a pro sport and you're having all this original content. Right? The Talk Fest is one show, but there'll be many, many other highlight shows that we'll be doing. Because we want fans engaged and where they can't get enough content. And I think we're really, we're very committed. We have Vision Entertainment, this full-on studio that's both producing live events and doing original content shows. Right? We want to bring entertainment, right, to sports.
The players are more than just their matches. And we need to make sure that we, as a league, provide that information for those players' fan bases to consume. We live in this esports 1.0 world where it's almost up to the player to constantly promote themselves and make their own content and push it out and try to do that and all that. It's just extra. How can they get to be the best in their gameplay skill if they have to spend all of this time doing these other things, right? To survive, the league's there to help. The league is there to help lift some of that load and provide that for them.
Probably didn't expect that long an answer to a simple question. And next question?
Jesse Collins, Twin Galaxies editorial. So you were talking about scoring earlier, about the melee kills being 10 points and all that. Do you see that really changing early game battle tactics? And how will that affect practice modes with people who are in public matches?
Does the scoring change the gameplay tactics? Well, here's what I can tell you is when we did the orientation last week, and I sat up there talking to all the players, and I said, guess what? The point system's gonna change. There's just like this groan across the room. Oh man, you're ruining all of our practice, right? The whole strategies have to change. Like real fast. It was definitely communicated that it would absolutely impact the way that teams are going to choose to play. Now, which of course it would, because if your strategy is to basically not engage until the very end and you're forced to, it's a whole different ball of wax. But now you're viewing every match as a chance to go collect points for your team total over the season. So, but to the players' credit, now these are players who have thousands and thousands of hours of playtime, okay? They understood why the point system needed to change for the benefit of the viewership and for the viewing audience. They understood why it would generate more activity and why, and they got over that like relatively quickly, pretending that they're over it now. And then, but at least all of them found out together at the same time. The disadvantage of the change was evenly distributed, and that's and transparently, provided, which is another thing that the league wants to make sure it does.
Well, and the other thing we wanted to do with the entire league as it plays out is make strategy important. Right? So one of the things you've seen in the change in the game that David's pointed out is tactical deployment. Select where you're going to land. Don't make it random. And he and I are fascinated to watch what's going to happen over the first few weeks. Now, we ended there last week. That really sucked. Let's go over here. But you're also going to be able to see where everybody else is choosing. But right until the last second before the match starts, a team can change where they are. So there's going to be a lot of drama in this, right? And people are going to have to figure out what's the right strategy this week.
And just remember this: because we have a governance committee where the players and the teams are represented, all of these things are always on the table for discussion and change. We're all going to look together at how the whole thing's performing, how the audience is reacting, what works, what doesn't, what we think is going to put the best performance up there. The players say, hey, this change is going to make the best, viewership more so. Everyone will talk about it. So nothing's, permanent that way.
Yeah, and if the success of our league is predicated on the players and the teams, then we're stupid if we don't listen. We're stupid if we don't take their input, and we're stupid if we don't make changes. This is very different than selling more games.
Yeah. Any other questions? There's one way over there.
Yeah, as far as the players who unfortunately did not make it in to the Pro League, there's so many best players and brightest talents that are playing on the semi-pro level. How far, is there any ETA as to when they'll have like the leagues for their own to compete in? Because it's not at all over the world.
Well, if you didn't hear the question there's only 75 players that made it in. There's still a lot of great players out there. What are the opportunities that could exist for them? Okay, so I'll break this down into 3 different answers. Expanding regionally, right? We have to all look at that because it affects the economics, but do you have, a European version of this league? Do you have, and then you eventually go up to Worlds? That creates opportunities for pro players to exist in those spaces. Number two is the governance committee has to meet and decide whether or not roster changes or additions can take place between splits. So, because we have two 10-week splits. Do they want that? Do we want to free that up? And then lastly, and this just goes back to my other point, which is the Joe to Pro amateur expression of this league is going to be pretty wide and varied, and it's going to try to account for all the different tiered levels of play, and also partnerships with different facilities and outlets across the countries, where culminating matches can take place, where people can then move up, and really have a sort of a constant, active universe for this league. And so it's not so isolated into just like a one sort of thing. It's this whole. And Daybreak is super down with in-game integration of helping this activity and doing what they can do to support on their end too.
So the two parts he missed when he gave his three-part final answer was that one of the other things we're going to do with Daybreak is we're going to create this Joe to Pro ladder where at the end of the first season, right, we will have created a system where certain individuals, right, will have qualified to come to the combine, right, for the league for the second season, which will be draftable players, right, at that point. The second piece of it is if you look at the NBA, the NFL, and the Major League Baseball, how many teams do they have in each league? 30. How many do we have in this league? 15. So the other way you do this is you create two divisions, right? You run them in parallel during the season, and then you create your own structure of division playoffs, division conference championships, and then whatever our Super Bowls.
There's a lot of thinking that's going behind this, but already know this: 15 teams all in the same game at the same time is a big thing to bite off and chew and get it right and learn from that. You don't want to try to do too many things at one time. We all have to have, we're taking our best shot at this. We're going to have real active feedback from all the players and the teams as we do this. And then from there, collectively, we will grow the right directions. We don't have the attitude of coming in and just trying to tell you this is how it has to be, and it's only our ideas, and all that's just not what the case is. So if there's just a little bit of patience. We just got here for this, but man, we are as gung-ho about this as anyone could be. There's a question right there.
Hi, I'm Pineapples, captain of Echo Box. There's currently a negative stigma around H1Z1, especially in the Twitch community. Do you find that the league is going to change the feelings of H1Z1 in general for the public? I know there's going to be the league itself, which caters to us, the 0.1%. Then there's going to be the Joe to Pro, but we're still missing like 98% of the general population. We lack casual players a lot more nowadays. Is the league itself going to be taking more proactive methods to bring this casual player back?
Well, we've got fun about that. I want to answer that question so angrily, because I understand, I know exactly what you're saying. There's a bunch of different answers I have. One is, now that the game is free to play, exposure, let me back up. More people do not know about H1 than do. So, it's a huge untapped opportunity for people to come into H1, and because it's free to play, the barrier to entry is very low to come in and try. You just gotta have a PC and play it. So as the league broadcasts to as wide of an audience as possible, there's gonna be people who go, they don't even have known anything about Battle Royale, and the first thing they see is this, and they're like, I want to try that, and they can just download it there, and then they can start to come in, and there's a whole Joe to Pro pathway for them that exists. So, to the extent that we're able to engage new markets and new audiences, yes. In terms of the older market that is constantly hunting for the latest, greatest, newest, bestest thing, I've been in the game business since forever. That never goes away. H1Z1 is arguably one of the oldest Battle Royale games. So
2 years old.
Right? So and so you watch PUBG comes and does this, and then starts to do this. Fortnite then comes up and does. They all go through these cycles, and everybody tries to just capitalize on it. And then you have the feeding frenzy that Twitch is, because Twitch is a community, that basically moves its audience from one game to the other and the other. It's not like the audience of Twitch is expanding at an exponential rate. It's the same people sort of moving around, and it gets to be very club-like, right? So if the minute you have top influencers streaming one particular game, everybody seems to go over to that one, and then it just kind of moves over to this one. So the idea of trying to get into that business and somehow win in there some way, you're always going to be up this sort of zero-sum game there. Because I promise you there's going to be another Battle Royale game that's going to come out, and it's going to get a ton of attention. So it's really, the focus is really more on being much more approachable to a much wider group of people who may not even have heard of Twitch. I know it sounds crazy, but there's a lot of people who don't even know what Twitch is. If you could walk out the door and ask somebody, they're going to say, what's Twitch? I don't even know, right? That's the opportunity. And we are collectively going to be building a simple and easy pathway and bridge to come to our land.
I mean, the question is exactly the right question. People ask in today's esports, right? Whether it's League of Legends or it's Dota 2 or or what. That question in 3 years will be a question that no one asks anymore, because we're going to bring those 98% of people who don't play the game at a hardcore level to come watch this entertainment spectacle. They're going to say, when's the next match on? Right? They're going to say, I wish he hadn't done that. Now those guys are going to go get, I mean, the drama, the rivalry, the content, the player profiles, the spectacle of this league on that stage with this local quality broadcast. You're going to watch it for entertainment value.
Okay, so that's my favorite example to use, is how many people in this room have seen American Ninja Warrior? Okay? That is, it's very entertaining, easy to understand, real fast, it's presented well, and it doesn't mean you want to go out and start jumping through hoops to try to be on it, right? So, remember, as a league, we are producing a product, and that product is our broadcast and our content, and so the economics of that product come through the viewership. That's where it's coming from. In Esports 1.0, it tends to come through game sales. So it's a different prioritization. Ours is viewership, like the NFL or NBA or anything else.
So the last point I'll make on this is, if you guys have been over to the arena, obviously you see kind of the tagline we're using on this. What separates H1Z1 from the other Royales? What separates it from the other esports? I mean, our slogan is the best battle here. All these players are the top pros in the world.
In the genre,
It's the best battle here. And we're going to be using that forever, I hope. And we've talked about this. My partner here has told me that we can take any of the 15 teams in this room, right, and throw them in to the best PUBG, right, for it, and then H1Z1 players will win every one.
I didn't say that exactly.
What'd you say, Jace?
They practice.
You promised me that.
They practice. If they get the chance to practice, yes, of course, because the nature of H1Z1 is so much it's way more unforgiving than these other games. So it's.
You said it.
I believe in H1 player. I've been playing. Look, I only have 2,000 hours into the game, and I played the other ones. But I think you guys and gals, and I think that'd be a fun thing to test. Like we do some sort of league stuff where we start pitting different top teams, and for exhibition purposes. That'd be great.
Okay, so raise hands. Who agrees with that statement? All right. Let's take one more question.
Yep. Wait. One more question.
Talking about the other 98%, do you guys plan on pushing the game towards other platforms, like any console games, to get some more attention in? Is that something you want to know a professional about?
Okay, well, okay. So if you didn't hear the question related to, are we going to push this to other platforms and try to involve it? Here, this is what I will say. Should there be a console version? Should there be a console version? Then absolutely, of course, we want to set up the league for that one too. And I think it'd be super cool to have on one day you have the PC go, and on the next day you have the console go. They're different broadcasts, but there could be some real fun things that are done that way. So,
Well, Mark's not for favorite. We're a long way away from that. Long way?
we're a long way from any kind of console. Yeah, again, it's super far away.
Yeah, but don't miss tomorrow's, press briefings.
Yeah.
Say it.
Yeah.
A quick follow-up to that, if you did have a PC and say a console, whatever, would you see bleed over from the different teams from as both leagues?
Yeah, I mean, we absolutely can't predict that, right? I mean, it's just, you're sitting up, it's so different, right? And are those players on PC going to be, equivalent? Probably not.
I would tend to think that the teams that have stepped up and signed up to be part of this league, despite all of the headwind that I know, the Twitch community or whatever, and those have put, I would think that as we go into, should there be a console version, a console league, those teams would get the opportunity to decide whether they want to expand their team into that too, right? Like add another 5 players or whatever that set will be.
We made that commitment to the owners, so you guys will have first choice to participate in it. So with that, we're going to wrap it up. This has been great. I mean, I love watching the faces of the crowd, nod heads and smile and raise hands and the rest. This weekend is all about all of us. It's our league. It's our league, and we're going to show the world starting tomorrow. It's going to be a lot of fun.
One request, if you're a player, please take pictures of stuff and you and your friends, and after the game or whatever, just tweet it out, because what you guys are experiencing right now is very aspirational for a lot of game players out there. And it's not just you playing the game, it's just you whatever. I think people want as much visibility into that as you're willing to give. So I would encourage you to do that, especially as we lead up to tomorrow.
Thank you all, Jace, for having me here for the next 94 weeks. Well, we hope to have a lot of fun interacting with you guys, your families, your team owners, the press, and all the other folks who are going to come tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you.